Warning: the opinions discussed in this video do not necessarily represent my own views. Rather, it is a rationalization and analysis of marginalized opinions. The ban list is for competitive play. There, I said it. Filthy casuals, beware. Just kidding. You guys are welcome to, of course. But my point still stands. The ban list is meant for and designed for competitive play. Players who aren't playing at the competitive level shouldn't really care what cards are banned or limited at all. They can play with whatever custom list that they desire. Before I continue, I know that a handful of you are already thinking to yourselves, but I only go to locals, and locals uses the Konami ban list, so it does affect me. Of course they use the ban list. You just entered a tournament, and guess what? That's competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! If you only play at the level of locals, that's still competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And thus the ban list is meant to impact you too. Now, why do I say this? Why should the ban list not be used to balance the entire game, both at the low and high level, but ignore the casual level and look solely at the competitive level? Well, for one, if we look at the casual level as well, we get pushed into principle arguments where a ton of silly cards can possibly be put onto the chopping block. In the past, a notorious example that I can use is Judgment Dragon. Oh boy, this card caused tears of salt to rain from the heavens. At one point in time, this card was indeed the end-all and be-all in the game, but this was way back in 2010, more than half a decade ago. The game has changed a lot since then. Wiping the entire field at a moment's notice, multiple times per turn, is still obviously nothing to scoff at though. Even today, this effect can be rather game-changing, and for strict principle folk, with air quotations around principle, likely they would have to ban this card for its tremendous potential to turn the tides of games from a single top deck. This is but only a single example though. I hope that from this you can understand what I term as the principle people. These players have to hit cards based on their perceived power without any attachment to the results or to the metagame. They want cards hit regardless of whether the deck they're used in is good or bad. While there are arguments for this, by and large, this is kind of a shoddy thought process that hits cards that don't really need to be hit. Here is why the ban list should solely look at competitive play. Number one, and the biggest reason of all, tournament results are basically the only way that we can be provided with objective data as to what is truly strong and what is not strong. Going back to my previous example with Judgment Dragon, when you hit the card based on the principle that its effect is too powerful alone, without looking at the game state, you run the risk of potentially hitting a card in a weak deck without ever having the need to hit it at all. Plus, this is purely based on the subjective opinion of what is quote-unquote broken. Different people have different definitions of this, and thus it's hard to make a case for single cards in a vacuum. When we look only at the competitive meta, we can immediately see what decks are doing the best and narrow down our ban list to the cards in those decks. This way, we are only hitting the strongest and likely the most broken decks in the game. If they weren't broken, well, one, players wouldn't play with them, and then two, they wouldn't be the decks winning mainly. So that's my first point. The ban list should be based around competitive meta because that's literally the only way we can get objective, factual evidence as to what the best decks actually are. And that's the only way we can be objective about the way we approach the ban list. If you want to be subjective when you approach the ban list, that's one way, but that's not a factual, evidence-based way of approaching the ban list that is very specific to hitting what the actual problems are, and this method also avoids scapegoating cards. And for my second reason, only competitive players will use the ban list anyways. I made a point earlier, but I want to expand upon it here. Non-competitive players are not bound to use the ban list at all, by any means. As I previously said, if you go to locals, guess what? You're not just a casual player anymore, and you have to abide by sanctioned tournament rules, and hence the ban list encompasses you too. Obviously, if you only play casually with friends, why should you care what goes on the ban list or not? You can play with whatever list or set of cards that you want to. That's why people form their own drafting cubes or leagues with friends. On a side note, this is actually something that I highly recommend. Cubes are really fun if they're well designed and give you the feeling like you're playing old Yu-Gi-Oh! But with new cards. I also recommend playing with different sets of custom rules One that I really found enjoyable is using Battle Pack 3 with their custom rules. It makes for some very interesting gameplay and using cards that you never would use otherwise. Anyways, though, I'm getting a little bit off track here. The premise of my second point is that the ban list only affects competitive players, so that's who it should cater to, obviously, because that's who's using the ban list, and so that's who it should be made around. Why should it be made around casual players who don't even have to use the ban list? A popular counter-argument to this position is that it will allow some so-called unhealthy cards back into the game. I suppose a prime example of this would be Gateway coming back to 1, or even, gasp, 2, like in the OCG. As for me, I don't see a problem with this at all. You think 6 Samurai are going to win tournaments with a single Gateway? Doubtful. Pendulums do what Gateway dreams it could do. And look at the OCG. 6 Samurai with 2 Gateway aren't doing a single thing. This clearly shows that the deck has been long outsped and power creeped. Okay, Master Fox, I like your facts, but I don't like getting OTK'd by scrub 6 Samurai players randomly, especially at regionals. That's why Gateway is at 1. It's too powerful of a single card. No, not anymore. If it were, 6 Samurai would be doing something at tournaments. And guess what? I don't like getting randomly OTK'd either, but it's part of the game. Whether it's 6 Samurai or Moldoche, there will always be times where you get sacked. Yes, even in a competitive environment in a tournament. It sucks to go X1 off the bat to a bad deck, but such is life. These decks for a fact don't have the consistency to do well at events, and consistency is the name of the game here. So you lost one match, so what? If you're a good player piloting a competitive deck that you know through and through, even going X1 off the bat isn't a death sentence. You can go and fight your way back to the top ranks if you're truly good. 90% of the time, running into something like Samurai should be a free win. So where was I going with this again? Well, people tend to complain about these scrubby decks that, with luck, can beat out even meta decks, but I don't see a problem with that. Which deck would you rather play? A deck that can OTK 1 out of 30 games, or a deck that can go toe-to-toe with any deck, is very consistent, but has no such thing as a godly hand? I think the answer is pretty clear here. My argument can obviously be applied to other decks like very inconsistent FTK decks. The only FTK deck that was ever really, truly a problem in the TCG is Frog FTK, but that's another matter. I find most FTKs to be way overhyped, and most of them end up doing literally nothing. Look at things like the Chicken Game FTK, for example. Most highly competitive, skilled metagames will have some sort of cheese or some sort of pub stomping style. Like, look at StarCraft, for example. Even in StarCraft, which is one of the most skill-intensive video games out there, it still has room for cheese strategies, like, the 6-pool rush, photon cannon rush, and I believe it's bunker rush with Terran. All of these are cheese strategies that can even take top players out, but do they consistently win? Not really. All in all, though, getting back to my main point, the ban list was implemented with one thing in mind, and that is competitive play. It was only implemented because cards were too powerful and influenced the game far too much, and that's why the ban list was implemented in the first place. There's no reason for some relics of the past to still remain on there, but that's a little bit different topic. Some cards can be questionable, like Self-Destruct Button, which was not really hit for being a dominating competitive force, but more because draws are really annoying to deal with in tournaments and for Konami policy in general. Last turn is another example of this type of exception. Outside of these special cases, though, the ban list should exist to serve the highest levels of competitive play. It's the only way we can be objective about it and have it serve its intended purpose. I think I've rambled on long enough, so I'll leave you with that. Tell me your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? What are your arguments against this? That's it for this video. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.